Foster mom takes in a baby girl and starts to notice startling similarities to her son. When Katie Page moved to Colorado for a fresh start in life, she had no idea she would discover her destiny there. Through a truly miraculous course of events, Page became a foster mom, adopting a baby boy who desperately needed a home. Surprisingly, things would only get more extraordinary from there. Soon enough, Page felt ready to begin fostering another child, a young girl who had been abandoned at the hospital. As the foster mom began raising her two new children, she started noticing bizarre coincidences between the two. As time went on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When Katie Page finally solved the mystery, she could not believe the truth. In 2014, Katie Page needed a drastic change. In her 30s and freshly separated from her husband, she accepted a new job in faraway Colorado Springs. There, Page looked forward to starting fresh. Soon enough, Page found herself settling into a new house in Colorado Springs. The house was a large 4-bedroom home. I told my friends that it was meant for more, even though I really didn't know what more meant at the time, Page recalled. A deeply religious person, Page joined her local church shortly after arriving in Colorado Springs. A few weeks later, she received a letter that changed her life. It was an invitation to a seminar, sponsored by the church, that would provide details about fostering children in need. Somewhere down deep inside, Page knew she needed to attend the seminar. Page also called her mother and asked her to go to the seminar with her. Understandably, at first, Page's mother wondered Page wanted to become a foster mom. After all, she had recently started a new job in a new city, and moved into a new home. Taking on a child would be a lot more work. However, Page's mother wanted to make her daughter happy, so she agreed to accompany her to the meeting. Days later, Page felt chills run down her back as the presentation started. It felt as though her entire life had left to that exact moment. As Page learned about fostering children, she desperately wanted to become a foster mom. Still, the young woman also felt a tad nervous. This would be a lot of work. However, deep inside, Page felt sure this was what she had always needed. Less than a year after the seminar, on Mother's Day 2015, Katie Page completed her application to become a foster mom. After a training course, Page began preparing for a child by temporarily taking in children who needed a short-term home. She took to the job naturally, with joy and vigor. Soon, everyone agreed, Page would make a great foster mom. As she fostered more children, Page found herself wanting to adopt. As a foster mom, the children never stayed with Page long. Now, she felt ready to become a full-time mom. However, nothing could prepare Page for what the foster system gave her next. The case started with a life-threatening situation and would ultimately lead Page to an incredible mystery. One day, the foster called Page, asking if she could take a tragic case. "I had a voicemail on my phone in the middle of the workday from my caseworker," she recalled later. It was about a baby boy who had been abandoned at the hospital. While Page had never taken care of a newborn before, she felt compelled to take in the 14-month-old. He didn't even have a name yet. Even worse, since the boy's mother had exposed him to drugs while in the womb, he would suffer through withdrawal symptoms. Page simply could not sit idly by while the boy grew up alone. With an open heart and open arms, the foster mom welcomed the newborn boy into her home. Katie Page picked up the boy at the hospital. He didn't even have a name. As a woman of faith, Page believes that everything happens for a reason. So, she decided to name him her top choice, Grayson, because by God's grace, she now had a son, potentially for forever. From the very first moment that Page picked up Grayson in her arms, she knew she loved him as her own son. It was unlike any other connection she had felt. Page knew in an instant that she wanted to be his mother and raise him as her own. Of course, at the time, she had no idea about his past. Still, soon enough, the little boy's past would return and change their lives forever. As the first newborn she had ever cared for, Grayson held an incredibly important place in Page's life. Meanwhile, as Page took care of little Grayson and watched him growl, local social workers tried hard to Grayson's biological parents. Some workers posted information about Grayson in the local newspapers. Meanwhile, others returned to the hospital, searching for any clues they might have missed the first time around. However, nothing turned up. They only had a small piece of information about the biological mother, her first name and date of birth, left on a bracelet on Grayson at the hospital. Why had she left her name behind if she didn't want to be found? They would eventually discover the strange truth. After an exhaustive search, the foster agency could not find Grayson's biological parents. Sadly, it seemed that no one wanted to claim the little boy their own. Paige could simply not understand it. How could anyone want to give up her precious boy? Part of me was relieved that no one came forward, so that Grayson would be mine forever with no opposition, Paige explained. But there was always a pit in my stomach about one day having to tell my son that no one showed up at his termination hearing. No one came looking. Paige felt that there was something special about Grayson, something that separated him from the rest of the children she had cared for. So, the foster mom decided to make it official. The moment she saw him, Paige knew she wanted to become Grayson's mother. He had come into her life exactly when she needed him most. Plus, since Paige had raised Grayson from the 5th day of his entire life, she essentially was his mother. Meanwhile, after all this time, it had become clear that the boy's biological mother had no intention of coming back for her son. So, less than a year after she took him in, Paige decided to make things official. She had no doubt in her mind, Grayson deserved to become part of the Paige family. Days after Grayson turned 11 months old, Paige filed the paperwork to adopt the young boy. At the time, Paige had no idea that her life would soon take a huge left turn. Things moved very quickly once Paige decided to adopt Grayson. On May 14, 2017, he officially became her son. Less than 3 years after Paige received that fateful letter in her mailbox, she had already become a foster mom and adopted a son. Now that Grayson had become an official part of the family, everyone loved calling him by his new name, Grayson Page. Meanwhile, after adopting her son, Paige immediately started thinking about expanding her family. However, she knew that she should wait for a little while. Paige wanted to focus entirely on Grayson, making sure he grew into a healthy, happy child. After all, even after all this time, Grayson was still dealing with the life choices of his biological mother. Paige needed to spend all her free time helping Grayson developing. You see, he had both developmental and physical problems to overcome, as a result of his exposure to drugs inside his mother's womb. Thankfully, thanks to Paige's love and dedication, she helped him overcome these issues. As Paige learned, we can't pick when fate comes knocking. Just a couple of weeks after she finalized Grayson's adoption, the phone rang once again. It was the foster agency again. After asking me how we were doing post-adoption, the caseworker began to tell me about an emergency placement they had for a 4-day-old baby girl with drug exposure that was at the same hospital as Grayson had been born at, Paige said. And she was needing placement that afternoon. As the social worker told Paige about the new case, Paige felt the strangest sense of déjà vu. An unknown mother had dropped a 4-day-old baby at the same hospital Grayson had arrived at. However, this time around, it was a baby girl. Furthermore, just like Paige's new son, the young girl's mother had exposed her to drugs while inside the womb. You can see why Paige felt like it was fate that she would receive this particular call. Unsurprisingly, once again, the foster mom took the plunge, welcoming the baby girl into her home. That same day, the baby girl left the hospital and headed to her new home. When the foster agency workers arrived at Paige's house with the baby girl, they also brought along their file on the little girl. Sadly, they had little to add to what Paige already knew. Just like Grayson's case, the caseworkers knew almost nothing about the young girl's mother. And, if the past had taught them anything, they probably wouldn't find anything. But none of that mattered to Paige. She took the baby girl into her open arms, showing the baby girl all the affection in the world. However, as Paige started taking care of the young girl, she noticed something strange. While this little girl had a similar background to her son, she also looked and acted like Grayson. Soon, a far-fetched idea bloomed in Paige's mind. Like Grayson, the little girl had no name. So, Paige named her Hannah, one of her favorite names in the world. As she raised Hannah, her similarities to Grayson grew too hard to ignore. There were features on the babies that were very similar, Paige later explained. They both have a chin dimple, and the other feature is one that only a mama would see because it's covered by their diaper. Of course, the two children have their differences as well. He loves to chill and she's a wild thing, Paige recently said, laughing. Still, the two had more in common than not. So, Paige started to dig a little deeper. And what she uncovered next shocked her to her very core. Sure that there was some connection between her adopted son and the little girl she was fostering, Paige asked the foster agency for her story once again. This time, Paige heard a new detail: the woman who dropped Hannah off at the hospital had only given her first name. And it was the same first name that had been on Grayson's bracelet when his biological mother dropped him off at the hospital. Of course, it could have been a coincidence. However, the bizarre detail triggered Paige's suspicions. As the foster agency was too busy to hunt down leads, Paige needed to put on her detective hat. She soon took some time to review Grayson's discharge papers. There, Paige found even more evidence of her theory. While it took the hospital some time to find Grayson's discharge papers, they eventually located them. As she pored over them, Paige made a fantastic discovery. The birthday of Hannah's biological mother, provided when she dropped her off, was the same one listed on Grayson's bracelet. All of a sudden, Paige's theories didn't seem so crazy. However, it still seemed too unlikely that her two children shared the same birth mom. At first, Paige told herself to forget the thought. It seemed like fiction, entirely unreasonable. Things like that only happened in movies. But the idea kept gnawing at the back of Paige's mind. So, she started doing a little more digging. Over the next few months, Paige did all the research that her time and limited access could allow. She pored over files, scoured the internet, and even talked to people at the hospital on the days Grayson and Hannah were dropped off. After months of research, Paige actually managed to track down Hannah's birth mother. The woman even agreed to a conversation. The conversation between Paige and Hannah's birth mother was one neither woman would ever forget. In the middle of it, the woman confessed that she had given birth to another child, a year before giving up Hannah. Just like the baby girl, the woman had given her first child up without keeping any records. While Paige felt closer to the truth than ever, she needed to be sure. As one woman raising two children, there was only so much verifying that Paige could do. So, the foster mom arranged a meeting between her children's caseworker and Hannah's biological mother. The social workers would be able to ask much more in-depth questions and verify the birth mother's answers and authenticity. Following the meeting, Paige could only wait for the social worker's phone call. Finally, the phone rang. After all this time, Paige would receive the answer to the question burning inside her heart: were two children, one adopted and one simply in her foster care, actually related? Paige was at work when the social worker. Incredibly excited to hear the answer, she immediately left the office and answered the phone. Paige could hardly believe what the social worker said to her. "Katie, I think you're right. Her story breaks my heart and I can't believe it, but I am 90% sure you're right and this is a miracle," the social worker continued. However, just like Paige, the worker wanted to double-check her work. Less than an hour later, she called Paige back. As you can imagine, Paige had barely been able to breathe, let alone work. And what the social worker told her next turned her world upside down. Once again, Katie Paige's phone rang. About 45 minutes later, the caseworker called me back and said, "Katie, now I am 100% sure," Paige recalled of that fateful day. "We just found the last name she gave with Grayson's birth for a relative of Hannah. I cried as I hung up the phone. To confirm what the caseworker had found, Grayson and Hannah underwent a DNA test. The results proved what Paige had felt inside since the beginning. Without trying, she had taken Grayson's little sister. That's right. Grayson and Hannah are actually siblings. As you might imagine, Paige felt beyond thrilled to find out she had fatefully, if accidentally, taken in Grayson's biological sister. Immediately, she started planning for another adoption. When Paige discovered that Grayson and Hannah are siblings, she knew what she needed to do. On December 28, 2018, Paige signed Hannah's adoption papers and became a mother for a second time. How incredible! As the two siblings have grown up, the two have started acting less and less alike. Hannah is the opposite of Grayson, Paige explained in 2019. He loves to chill, and she's a wild thing. As soon as I started figuring it out that she was his sibling, I said, absolutely, I'll adopt her. Once I took in Grayson and I accepted being his mom, I accepted his family. In just a few years, Paige's whole life had changed. Now, she not only had two children of her own, but had been on the adventure of a lifetime. After all, her detective skills and the unlikeliness of her story are like something out of a movie. However, despite all the odds, Paige and the team at the foster agency proved that Grayson and Hannah were siblings. Now that social workers had the biological mother's information, they kept an eye on her. Soon enough, they discovered yet another big surprise. In fact, it was one that Paige was not sure she could handle. Paige needed to seriously consider what was best for her 2 children. Just a few months after Paige adopted Hannah, she and the foster agency received some bad news. Grayson and Hannah's mother was not only pregnant once again, but also using drugs. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your outlook, the mother told the social workers that she also planned on abandoning her 3rd child. Thankfully, the agency allowed Paige to intercede and take the child directly. After all, she believes the siblings should all stay together. As she prepared for a 3rd child in her life, Paige realized that her life would soon become harder than ever. However, the woman believes that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Paige was certainly about to test her theory firsthand. At first, as you might imagine, there was actually a bit of friction between Paige and the children's birth mother. However, when she realized that the former foster mom just wanted what was best for her children, she allowed Paige to adopt her 3rd child. Before adopting the 3rd child, Paige elected not to answer any questions about him publicly. However, that did not stop Grayson and Hannah's story from going viral. In the blink of an eye, all while she prepared to bring home a 3rd child, Paige's tale went viral across the United States. In early 2019, the hit morning show Good Morning America invited Paige onto their program, letting Paige tell her story. As you can imagine, audiences all across the United States felt tears come to their eyes when Paige told them of little Grayson and Hannah. "The minute I saw him in the hospital, I fell in love," Paige said of Grayson. "He's so calm and sweet. He has the biggest challenges of all the kids." After her appearance on Good Morning America, Paige started an Instagram and blog, Wood and Grace, where fans can watch these adorable siblings grow up. Now, finally, after all this time, Paige has adopted the woman's 3rd child and shared images of him with the world. In 2020, Paige once again made headlines when she adopted Grayson and Hannah's 3rd sibling. That's right. On June 25, 2020, Paige officially adopted little, 1-year-old Jackson, Grayson and Hannah's brother. Paige says that she knew from the very day of Jackson's birth that she was meant to be his mother. "The minute I held him, I was so overjoyed," Paige told Good Morning America when she returned to talk about Jackson. "I said, this is their brother, this is their family." As hard as it is to believe, this is not where Paige's unique story ends. "When Jackson came along, I just felt the best I could give him are his family and siblings that he identifies and feels connected to," Paige explained. Due to the coronavirus, Paige became Jackson's proud mother over the internet rather than in a courthouse. However, there were over 30 family members present for the video teleconference adoption, including Casey and Dustin Whitney. The Whitneys adopted 2 girls, Taylor, 8, and Edie Grace, 5, who are actually the older sisters of Jackson, Hannah, and Grayson. That's right. We did not know about Grayson until we were told it was too late and he had already been adopted. There was not much information on him, Casey explained to Good Morning America. "We kind of had a feeling, an intuition, that they had siblings. We had found out about Grayson and Hannah the same day." Apparently, a family member of the children's biological mother informed the Whitneys about their daughter's siblings. In fact, the couple actually tried to adopt Hannah before Paige could. Their reason? They also wanted to keep all the siblings in one family. "As moms, you feel like you have a duty to say, 'Hey, we fought for you,'" Casey said. "It didn't work out how I thought, but it worked out how it should." Dustin agrees with his wife, saying, "It's about fighting for them to stay with their siblings." However, as the Whitneys said, things have worked out well for everyone involved. The kids have all met, and the parents frequently plan meetups. "The bonus is Paige is like a sister to us now," Dustin added. Once upon a time, Paige had a massive house in Colorado, but there was still a problem: it was empty. Now, that's all changed. Strangely, she's come full circle, but everything's changed. "I was a single woman in a 4-bedroom house, and now every room in my house is full. It's never dull. People ask me all the time, 'How do you do it?'" She added, "I never thought I'd have 3 babies, but God doesn't give you more than you can handle." All this because Paige decided to open a letter from her church and attend a seminar. It just goes to show you, it just takes one little decision to change everything. Just ask Steve Carter Jr. Like Katie Paige, his entire future was changed because of adoption. Subscribe to the channel and do the bell to receive all new I love you so much.